right. Appears to be working. This is good.
And it's gallery view.
Yes, gallery view. So everybody should see everybody at the same size.
Alrighty.
All right. And so far, it's just you, me, and Teresa.
That's fine. We'll give it one more minute.
Perfect.
And then we'll get started.
Perfect. Be back in 20 seconds.
Sure. Hi there, someone calling in by phone.
Yes, hello.
Hi there. Good to hear you.
Good to hear you. It said that there were 4 people. Was that wrong?
There's Derek number 1, Derek number 2 on his second computer as a backup, and Johanna and Teresa.
Johanna, Teresa, Lisette has just come on. Hi, Lisette. And yeah, and Ardith. There you are.
We're a party.
Oh yeah. Lisette.
All right. Oh, Lisette has left again.
Well, probably be back.
She'll be
What
back,
did we
yeah.
say?
All right. I think we should get going, right?
Yep.
Let's get started.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. Whether you've tuned in today to Zoom or whether you're going to see this video at a later time, welcome to our discussions of the workbook lessons, a weekly event happening through the Facebook group. Let's discuss A Course in Miracles. I'd like to thank Derek, who's a FIP volunteer and who's working the back room, making sure all the tech aspects work smoothly. And yes, let me see. Last week, if you were with us last week, we had a guest. Tam Morgan was here, the co-president of the Foundation for Inner Peace, and she talked about her experience with A Course in Miracles and with the workbook lessons. The idea from today on is to be sharing and discussing the lessons. The sessions will be facilitated by FIP volunteers in turn, like myself. Today, I'm the facilitator. Next week, it's Manu, then Alan, and then Derek, or in any order that fits. This session offers a chance to the participants to go over the lessons of the past days again and offer an insight or ask a question or listen to what others have discovered. It's not, the idea is not so much that the facilitator will be offering all kinds of ideas. The idea is to get an exchange going. Today, what I'll do is I will go over the titles of the first 14 lessons together with you. But first, I would like to read a prayer from the workbook. And I'm going to share my screen so you can read along. Where do I have it? This takes a bit longer than I had anticipated, sorry. I'll read, I'm sorry, I can't find it to share. It is lesson 233. So if you'd like to read along, you can just turn to lesson 233. I had prepared it as a share screen, but somehow I can't find it. Those things happen. All right, here we go. I give my life to God to guide today. Father, I give you all my thoughts today. I would have none of mine. In place of them, give me your own. I give you all my acts as well, that I may do your will instead of seeking goals which cannot be obtained and wasting time in vain imaginings. Today I come to you I will step back and merely follow you. Be you the guide, and I the follower who questions not the wisdom of the infinite, nor love whose tenderness I cannot comprehend, but which is yet your perfect gift to me. Today we have one guide to lead us on, and as we walk together, we will give this day to him with no reserve at all. This is his day, and so it is a day of countless gifts and mercies unto us. Amen. And this may perhaps serve as a promise to those who have just started doing the workbook, that this is the type of lessons that you will be encountering later in the year. All right, welcome to a couple of other people who have joined. I'm going to share my screen now because we're going to have a look at the introduction to the workbook. Presumably you've read the introduction before you started, before the 1st of January, but it's never wrong to read it again. It bears reminding. I've highlighted a couple of paragraphs that pertain to the first lessons in particular. I hope everybody can see my share screen.
Yep.
All right, Workbook for Students Introduction. A theoretical foundation, as the text provides, is necessary as a framework to make the exercises in this workbook meaningful. Yet it is doing the exercises that will make the goal of the course possible. An untrained mind can accomplish nothing. It is the purpose of this workbook to train your mind to think along the lines the text sets forth. I'm going to jump to a line in the 3rd paragraph. The workbook is divided into 2 main sections. The first dealing with the undoing of the way you see now, and the second with the acquisition of true perception. So the first 14 lessons that we'll discuss today have to do with the undoing of the way we see now. Paragraph 4. The purpose of the workbook is to train your mind in a systematic way to a different perception of everyone and everything in the world. Paragraph 6. The only general rules to be observed throughout then are, first, that the exercises be practiced with great specificity, as will be indicated. Second, be sure that you do not decide for yourself that there are some people, situations, or things to which the ideas are inapplicable. This will interfere with transfer of training. The very nature of true perception is that it has no limits. It's the opposite of the way you see now. Again, it's stressed again that we are in the phase of undoing. Paragraph 8, we're almost there. Bear with me just a little longer. Some of the ideas in the workbook presents, you will find hard to believe. And here I can. And others may seem to be quite startling. This doesn't matter. You are merely asked to apply the ideas as you are directed to do. You are not asked to judge them at all. You're asked only to use them. It is their use that will give them meaning to you and will show you that they are true. And then the very last lines, do not allow yourself to make exceptions in applying the ideas the workbook contains. And whatever your reactions to the ideas may be, use them. Nothing more than that is required. Okay, so that's sort of like the stage is set to work with the lessons. I remember the first round I went through the workbook. I think I gave up after 10 lessons. I thought this isn't making any sense. This is so weird. And then, of course, after a little while, I picked up the book again. I tried again, And eventually I managed to complete the workbook, and I've completed it many times after. But I remember so well the first few rounds that I was just flabbergasted at the phrases that the workbook uses as their titles. We'll go over those now. I still have my screen share on. If somebody would like to volunteer and read the first 5 titles, so we can see together in what way the workbook is helping us to undo this, the way we see that we are used to seeing. Would somebody volunteer and read the titles, please?
I'd be glad to jump in and wrestle Manu
Thank
to do the
you.
first 5 here. By the way, Manu, good to see you.
Hello. Thank you.
Hello.
Thanks, everyone.
So lesson 1, nothing I see in this room or on the street from this window in this place means anything. Lesson 2, I have given everything I see in this room all the meaning that it has for me. Lesson 3, I do not understand anything I see in this room. And I guess the ... means on the street, from this window, in this place,
Exactly.
basically wherever you're looking.
Exactly.
Lesson 4, these thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this room, etc. And lesson 5, I am never upset for the reason I think.
That sort of follows from the previous 4, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Because if you don't understand what you're seeing, and the entire way that you're seeing is going to be uprooted, then it follows that if you're upset, and if the things are going to be uprooted, then you're not upset for what you think you are, because it's entirely different. Does anybody have like a thought on that? Perhaps can explain it better than I can? Or are there questions about lessons 1 through 5?
I should know sort of the answer to this, but just in this moment right now, I'm just realizing that you know, when they say I'm never upset for the reason I think, and then shortly thereafter I'm upset because I see something that is not there. I'm wondering, I'm just curious to ask you and everybody, like, if I'm seeing somebody who's being mean to their kid on the subway, you know, a parent who's being very mean and jerking the kid around and telling them to shut up, and I see a jerk who should be nice to her kid. So those are all my judgments on this person, of why they're bad or why they're wrong. Is that the thing? Are those judgments, like, they're not talking about that the girl isn't there. They're talking about that these arbitrary judgments of me thinking she's a jerk. Like, there is no jerk there. That is something I am cooking up myself. Is that kind of what lesson 5 is talking about?
I think you're going in the right direction with that. It's, you're never upset for the reason. So you think you're upset because you think that she's not treating her kid well. That's not the reason why you're upset. That's all that the lesson says. It doesn't give you an alternative, and it doesn't want you to even think of an alternative. The only thing that's happening today with lesson 5 is that you practice the idea that even though it looks like that you know that the reason why you're upset, that's not true. And that's the only thing that you need to accept for today. That may not be true. We're not talking about alternatives. We're not even talking about yet asking the Holy Spirit. That comes later. Right now, it's just acknowledging the fact that you're not upset for the reason you think. It doesn't say you can't be upset.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that you're upset is different than the one that you think it is. At least that's how I understand it. If somebody wants to chime in.
I just want to say that's really helpful for me. It just reminded me to practice the lesson at face value and not try to go down a rabbit hole of what does it really mean? What are the ifs, ands, and buts? What about this scenario? What about is just breathe, let it go.
Yeah.
See if I can practice just sort of be holding or accepting or considering accepting this idea, and relax.
Yeah. I was thinking before this session started, a comparison, and what it is undoing what we're doing with these first, especially with the January lessons, I would say. It's like a person or myself, suppose you're used to eating sweets all the time, everything with sugar and sweet and chocolate, and then you've committed to a healthy diet. Well, that can be quite a shock. And then if you get like a tangerine for breakfast and a grapefruit, you go like, sort of sour. I don't want to have this. And so, but then it's in the end, that the sugar will be phased out, and all the things that aren't good for you. And this is just a metaphor or an analogy, but at first it feels weird, and you'll just have to trust that the person who is a dietitian knows what they're doing. And so that's I suppose what helps me to think of a strange lesson like lesson 5. I'm never upset for the reason I think. That is in itself upsetting.
Thank you. Yes.
When you think about it, what other way in the world could Jesus, the voice here, have begun these lessons? Because there's really no easy way into the lessons, because it's such a radical change of everything we think. So I get the feeling that, he just said, okay, I'm going to suck it to you right in these first 5. Get ready. Because by the time you get to that number 5, I mean, it's just inevitable. Every single person, I bet you would not be one worker of this workbook who would get to that 5 and say, oh, okay. They're going to have, by that time, the scenario that Derek brought up, everybody's got their own scenario. One worst case something is going to come up. And whether you can leap past that to the next, that's a good test, I remember, for me, though, I remember when I went back for this particular one, number 5, for some reason, I didn't have the reaction to that like that. I guess I had kind of blanked out because from the very first one on, I was bored. I was bored because it had told me, just do it. And I didn't see any point in it at the beginning at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah,
that's my.
I totally relate to that. It's like you don't see the point, and then you don't want to put the effort in. Whereas
Exactly.
in the introduction, it clearly says, what you think about them is completely beside the point.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, it's like just swallow the tablet I'm offering you.
Yeah, but if we think, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if we think for 1 second that little voice in there is going to be quiet about it, we got another thing coming. We start these lessons.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Perhaps that's the purpose of the first
Absolutely,
lesson,
absolutely.
to make us aware of the resistance that we have, and it comes in all kinds of shapes and forms. Yeah,
definitely.
I've done the course a number of times over the last 10 years, and what I found useful for this lesson is it kind of stops me in my track from making a story about something, because my mind starts running off making a story, not even knowing all the facts.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
And then pushing it out in the world, blaming others. So it kind of stops me, like, I'm never upset for the reason I think. Don't get upset. Whatever's happening is happening for a reason, but you don't know the story. You don't know why.
Good point. Good point. Thank you. And Manu?
Oh, I was just nodding my head to what Mustafa and all of you were saying. And, basically we've made shit up. And
Please explain.
so everything we see, everything we seem to understand, all our thoughts, beliefs, assumptions, it's all made up thanks to our society that we grew up in and thanks to us. And so this is an invitation by Jesus to start to just give it up and know that we don't know shit. We don't know anything about anything. And to come to that beginner's mind so that we can be shown what to do and where to go.
That's really well put. Would you read 6 through 10, Manu? Hold on.
Okay, would love to. So lesson 6, I am upset because I see something that is not there. I see only the past. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. I see nothing as it is now. And my thoughts do not mean anything.
So this is sort of like the first 5 lessons squared, right? My thoughts
Yes.
do not mean.
My ego takes even got more ruffled at the second 5 than the first 5. Yeah, can I jump in here on the something about the second 5 really quickly?
Please do.
I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I've been through this section of the workbook about 6 times. So I would think that this 7th time around I would not have these thoughts, but it's crazy that my ego or my my past thinking, when it saw number 10, can you bring up 10 again so I can look at it? Yeah, my thoughts do not mean anything. And I start coming up with crazy scenarios here in our dream world. And I'm like, if I'm standing in the middle of a street and a car is coming at me and I think I should jump out of the way, but then I go, oh, hold on a second, Derek, your thoughts do not mean anything. And then I get hit by a car, I'm dead, And so clearly there's a lot of things I've learned since I was born here in the dream world, in the meaningless dream world, they're all meaningless, but there's still cause and effect, like getting hit by a car. And so I was trying to reconcile that for my 49 years, there's lots of things I have learned that help me get by in the world much better now than before I had learned them. And so I sort of like am holding that to one side and then go, okay, Derek, that you got that. Now just for the purpose of learning to unlearn, let go of that and just, A, practice this thought as it is, and then B, when I have judgments and triggers and things that are clearly not jump out of the way of the car, but they're clearly judgments in my mind that take me out of peace. This is a perfect thought to help me let go of the dog chasing its tail in my head. So it's like, Derek, use it for that and stop arguing with these other examples. These are sort of 2 different things we're talking about here.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. It's very helpful. I find that very helpful. So it's actually a relief.
Mm-hmm.
Saying that title, my thoughts do not mean anything. Phew.
Yeah.
It doesn't really tell. It doesn't really tell us, don't jump out of the way of that car. I mean, it's just
Exactly.
saying what it's saying up to that point. And I mean, if you didn't and you're gone, then these workbook lessons don't matter, do they? So
Right.
it just that's the way I've taken it all. That's the way I reconciled when I got to a point where I realized that's what I was doing, just kind of running it over in my mind. And I would say, stop, and just plow on through. I guess the whole idea is, as it is with the entire course, it's cumulative. Sometimes there may be one lesson. Somewhere it says, or teachers have said, I'm not sure if it's in here or not, that if you get just one lesson all the way through, you can close the book, really. You've got it.
Mm-hmm.
But most of us are not that speedy. So we have to just kind of go step by step. But yeah, okay, that's it.
True, that's true. Anybody else on what we've talked about so far? All right, I'm going to read 11 now because I've also included a paragraph that I thought was interesting that pertained to this particular undoing that we're in the middle of. Lesson 11, my meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. That used to just get me, that sentence. Anyway, the paragraph that I've copied is this. This is the first idea we have had that is related to a major phase of the correction process, the reversal of the thinking of the world. It seems as if the world determines what you perceive. Today's idea introduces the concept that your thoughts determine the world you see. Be glad indeed to practice the idea in its initial form, for in this idea is your release made sure. That's the relief that we talked about. The key to forgiveness lies in it. So to me, the key sentence in this paragraph is, today's idea introduces the concept that your thoughts determine the world you see. And that's so contrary to conventional worldly thinking that it takes some adjustment.
I think you can add to that one, the second most important one in that is the key to forgiveness lies in it. That's how important that is.
Yeah, can you elaborate a bit?
What?
Okay, can you expand on that a bit?
Oh, well, no, I mean, it's just where you had pointed out the point of this particular thing and the fact that it's relating to a major phase of the correction process. And then I skipped down to the last line.
True,
it's how important it is that this is the very key to forgiveness that lies in this.
Exactly. And I was just thinking, why is it the key? That was what I was thinking already.
Oh, I hadn't gone that far. I'm just taking this very literally step by step. Sorry about that.
Don't say you're sorry. I think it's your thoughts determine the world you see. And so forgiveness, of course, has to do with your thoughts. That forgiveness is nothing.
And forgiveness is the absolute key. I mean, that's what we have to do. So this is the first time, I think, well, yeah, up to here in the lessons that kind of thing has been brought to our attention.
Yes.
And I can imagine that someone would say, what? Key to forgiveness lies in it? Whoa. You know.
I think it also helps not to blame ourselves, to go beating ourselves up because our thinking has been wrong. And this is the first time we're being introduced on it. A lot of times we beat ourselves up feeling bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I mean, forgiveness is I've gone through my own forgiveness. And it feels like a weight has been taken off.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Right.
It's set, the fact that it's set in this context and that it comes this early, and it's also put in that thing that where we're not supposed to, all we're to do is just read it and do it. So that's another thing that would lift off the burden, because that's gonna come in there right away.
Well, because if your thoughts, if the thoughts determine the world you see, the responsibility for the world is in your thoughts.
Yep.
And that's the link to forgiveness, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because you think something is wrong in the world, but your thoughts determine the world. So the forgiveness happens inside, in you, has nothing to do with the world you see.
Yeah, it's pointing it back at us.
That kind of makes me think of something that's been dawning on me recently, in terms of what for me, understanding what forgiveness means in a way that I just kind of get it in my bones. I feel like it's starting to happen a little bit. And I was just thinking that, if I'm caught up in some thought, like I mentioned that example earlier, judging somebody out there in the outside world. So I'm believing this judgment and I'm in my head stressed out and I think they should, I don't know if I should intervene or not. And there's all this tension and all these related thoughts and I'm trapped in all that. And if I go, hold on a second, Derek, these thoughts are meaningless. Just let them go. Stop believing. They're meaningless in the sense of there's nothing to believe in. They're meaningless. There's no belief, just let go of believing in any of it. I'm starting to go, oh my goodness, that recognizing something as meaningless or recognizing it as nothing so that I have no connection, responsibility to it, is just like, okay, that letting go is what I'm starting to understand for me. At least one definition of forgiveness for me is when you just literally stop believing or let go of a belief in, and that little piece of energy or that thought just goes drifting off because you're not clinging on to it anymore.
Yeah. And then the idea that it's meaningless helps you do that.
Yep.
Yeah. I sometimes think of forgiving as setting free. That
Mm.
helps me in my thinking. Because then, oh yeah, of course, I don't want to be clinging to all kinds of meaningless ideas. Who would want to cling to a meaningless idea? So you need to set it free. And that helps me to think in terms of setting free.
I like that.
Yeah, thank you for saying it that way, Derek, and for cementing it, Johanna, because you know, when obviously forgiveness is such a central theme to the course, and we all have struggled in the past in some ways to understand what true forgiveness is. And to make it practical, I think, Derek, I'm with you. I also think of forgiveness in that way, and that it ties in very nicely with other non-dual systems in the world. You know, how do we view the world? And you described it perfectly, in my opinion, to practice forgiveness constantly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manu. Anybody else wants to add anything to it? All right, I've got a couple more lessons till we get to 14. Mustafa, would you read 12 through 14, please?
Sure. Lesson 12, I'm upset because I see a meaningless world. Lesson 13, a meaningless world engenders fear. Lesson 14, God did not create a meaningless world.
Any thoughts, Mustafa? You don't have to.
No. I guess lesson 12 is really getting at in terms of we're being told, sorry, I'm upset because I see a meaningless world. So the initial exercises, they're kind of taking away what we're thinking. And now we're being told we're upset because we're seeing a world that's meaningless. And by the time you get to lesson 14, it's also telling us that what we're seeing is not really a meaningless world. It's been a world that's been created by God. So God did not create a meaningless world. He did create meaning, but we just don't see it.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's sort of like a relief, right? To think
Yeah.
God did not create a meaningless world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank
And
heaven,
it's-
there's meaning somewhere.
There's some, yeah, we just can't see it. Or
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, the thing that I don't get it yet. I sort of barely get it intellectually, and I certainly don't get it in my gut or in my bones yet, which is if the stuff that we see as neutral has no meaning. And then it's like, okay, who's going to win this? Who's going to win this? Is God's meaning of love going to get put on this neutral, this meaningless? I even get confused trying to say it.
Written on it. Gets written
yeah,
on
thank
it.
you.
Yeah,
Written on it.
Yeah.
Is my judgmental perception and my limited perception going to be written on it? And I really just got to say that. And the workbook even says you may find it difficult to believe this, so kind of don't worry about it. But that competition of whose meaning is going to get put on, I just don't understand how that connects to engendering fear per se.
All right. Anybody want to try?
I can take a stab at that.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, these what's amazing about these lessons, and as we've been told, is that any one of these lessons fully understood and practiced will free us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're just mind-boggling. And so in my understanding, Derek, the reason we are upset is because we have created everything in our minds about what's going on.
Mhm.
And at a very core level, we understand that we don't really have the ability to understand everything. And so whatever world we've pieced together is in its own way illogical and is not complete in its understanding, right? So we see that at a subconscious level, we see the inconsistencies and the way we've described the world to us. And we also see that by describing the world like this to ourselves, we are by that very means separate. And so most of this is subconscious, and it creates terror inside us because we see a meaningless world because we've defined it, not having any clue as to what it is. And we see ourselves separate from it thanks to our thinking about it in the way we think about it.
Mhm.
And so that's what creates terror and the fear that we feel perceptibly or imperceptibly.
Hmm.
I'm letting
Yeah.
that trickle in. That helped. Not at a conscious level, but I'm feeling something shifting in my mind. That was helpful. Thank you.
And
That
it's also led.
illustrates.
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh. No, you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I mean, when I was going through these exercises, I was actually going through turmoil over 10 years ago. So when I was reading these exercises, as Manu pointed out, like, I mean, all of a sudden it's like I'm being shocked, and I felt like in turmoil, like I couldn't feel, like I couldn't understand what was going on anymore because I was reading these lessons. So my whole world was shattering in terms of the way I thought it was, breaking all my beliefs down, and then rebuilding it up again.
The two of you putting those two things together, that really made sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because we're so accustomed to doing things one way, or seeing things one way, and then all of a sudden we're getting hit with a different perspective.
And it's like if our semblance of control that we had pieced together, knowing subconsciously that it's tenuous, but we're trying, and if that semblance of control starts breaking apart, I can now see for myself, I'd be going, what? Well, hold, that would engender fear.
Yeah.
You're given the authority problem. That's where we get hit with it right there.
Yeah.
That's the key. It elaborates obviously through the rest of these lessons, and if we bother to read the text, which a lot of us don't in the beginning, it really, to me, that's a separation when you get to 14, because you see the word God right up there. And if God didn't create that meaningless world, whack. We did. We have. We are. And from then on, we're put on notice there. And it's a reminder, that subconscious reminder that we feel. And that's, to me, I've read so many teachers and so many people making their impressions about this. And when it comes down to that, that's exactly what we're faced with. And that's how each one of us, it resolves it. We're told that an individualized way that we're going to go about it, but it's like a sock it to me right early on.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Manu.
I was just agreeing with Ardith. Thanks, Derek.
This might be this question that I'm about to ask might be a rabbit hole. And if it is, any one of you just tell me, Derek, it's meaningless, let it go.
Meaningless.
It's funny so far.
Yeah.
Perfect. Actually, perfect.
So here's just sort of the thought that went through my head, which is kind of a philosophical thought that, like I said, it might be just a distraction. But on lesson 14, God did not create a meaningless world. The first way that I interpreted that was when I see through the eyes of God, as Derek, the human being, looking through my eyeballs, but I'm filled with loving thoughts and forgiveness and loving perceptions, or I see quote unquote the real world. I'm filled with love, and if there's people in pain, I'm filled with compassion. So I'm just filled with love qualities, and that's the meaningful world. But then I'm like, hold on a second, is this thing number 14 referring to, in reality and truth, is this invisible oneness that we are, and everything in form is all a perception, projection, just a creation of the ego mind. So it doesn't even exist to be meaningful or meaningless. It's so when God did not create a meaningless world, I was trying to figure out which of those two this line was referring to, but it might not be this. My question might be moot now that I've said it out loud.
Anybody?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, because we're trying to figure out, okay, so what is real, what is meaningful, right?
Yep. Mhm.
In an ultimate sense.
Mhm.
And I think the first step is to, in a way, why the happy dream exists or the transitional bridge exists. I think the first step is to understand the world as we see it in a loving and kind and forgiving manner. And so I think that's what you're referring to, and it's all good. It's part of our journey. And until we experience that oneness on a consistent basis, God hasn't taken that final step to bring us over. And so this is the best we can do in the meantime.
Got it. That's helpful.
It reminded me of the biblical words, be in the world, but not of the world. And it just really makes a lot of sense to me, even at this nonsensical point.
Yeah.
Because it for one thing, it separates out the so-called quote-unquote physical world we see, Earth, planets, things like that, and it centers us back to the world system, which then centers us back as we go along to the split mind. I know I'm going way ahead here, but the point is that, yeah, I lost my point. It went floating away.
Oh, you said it. Ardith, you said it. Yeah.
Thank you. That was enough. Exclamation point.
Yeah, the idea is to be in the world, but not of it.
Yeah.
Yes, and then I suppose God did not create a meaningless world, but since we believe we're here, what are we to do? What are we to do with it?
Good question.
I
Be in it and not of it.
I just had something happen to me yesterday with a traumatized friend that I think might fit into what you two just said, what you three just said.
Go ahead.
And I'm curious if it does. So a friend that I've known for a number of years has been through hell and back as a child, and it's happened over and over again in her adult life, and she's in really ill health, and all sorts of bad things happen to her. And I was noticing as I was listening to her yesterday, I was noticing my mind could either go to seeing her as a victim and really pitying her situation, and sort of this notion came to mind that I thought of it 6 months ago. It's just my own thought, not from the course. But the thought was, God bless her through me. It means nothing to me, or she means nothing to me. And I would think that if I had said that about my friend last night, God bless her through me, she means nothing to me, I thought I would have become colder in my heart, like by saying something like that, by basically giving her condition and her to God, so that I'm not seeing her as a victim and worrying and feeling bad and all that sort of stuff. But when I had that thought, my heart actually softened, and I was able to hear the horrific things that have been happening to her, and I just felt more like I am now. I just felt more touched, more compassionate, more teary, So the more I gave it to God, the more it feels like God came through me to give me these loving, compassionate feelings, because Derek was out of the way with his victim stories. So it was just an interesting
That's
thing that happened yesterday.
beautiful. It's and that's when presence happens.
Hmm. That's beautiful. Yes.
Like if all of this practice over the years has led to me being able to be there for people in pain without seeing them as victims, then I think that this is really good practice.
Absolutely. And the thing is, if you were able not to believe the story,
Mhm.
you were present and you connected to her. And
Yeah.
that's the basis for miracles.
Mm,
So a miracle is an exchange
Mm.
between two people,
Mhm.
between two equals, and not because and not one lesser and one higher or something. It's between equals.
Yes.
And
It's
you
basic
can
to
go ahead.
Johanna, sorry, to tie these lessons into what we are just talking about. It's basically getting rid of our the meaningless world that we've constructed in our heads. It's
Mm.
kind of bypassing it and being present, like you said, to just the for the lack of a better word, the spirit aspects of each one of us,
mm,
and just being there and just seeing that.
mhm. Wow.
So beautiful share, Derek.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all for holding space for me.
Also it gives us this by the time it gets up to lesson 14, it really it does give us hope, I think, on some level. If we think about it, we can't. It's inevitable. We can't go through these totally blank. But when you see the world you see has nothing to do with reality, so that could be happening, meeting somebody at a moment exactly when they're hearing someone else's pain or when they are experiencing something really difficult. That, I'm sure, jumps out right off this page because to me it's a hopeful note for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we see that it's of our own making and it does not exist, then there's a possibility, even if it's a little crack in the door, of a different world altogether.
Yeah,
I don't know.
hopeful.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, it gave me a note of hope anyway. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that we are sitting here together reading these revelatory lessons, that's hope. And remember that when we do this in spirit, we are really in that holy instant as brothers and
Mm.
siblings.
Mm.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's the whole point of these sessions. Yeah.
Mm.
Perhaps it's good if I read paragraph 1 and 3 of lesson 14, because they bear on our conversation.
Yeah.
The idea for today is, of course, the reason why a meaningless world is impossible. What God did not create does not exist. And everything that does exist exists as He created it. The world you see has nothing to do with reality. It is of your own making, and it does not exist. And then paragraph 3, the idea for today is another step in learning to let go the thoughts that you have written on the world and see the word of God in their place.
Mm.
The early steps in this exchange, which can truly be called salvation, can be quite difficult and even quite painful. Some of them will lead you directly into fear. We talked about that, huh? You will not be left there. You will go far beyond it. Our direction is toward perfect safety and perfect peace.
Wow.
Mm.
It's a lovely
That
Beautiful.
brings us right back to the introduction of the Course. Nothing real can be threatened.
Mm.
Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God.
Wow. Yes.
Such
Yes.
consistency.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Right.
consistency.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't call it a symphony for nothing, right? It's these themes come back in different keys and in different shades and.
You know what it sounds like when you just mentioned symphony? I just got the vision of, okay, we're all sitting down there. Each one of us has a different instrument, and everybody's kind of chit-chatting, and they're waiting for the conductor to show up, and they just decide, oh, well, he or she is not going to show up, so let's just start. And all talk about the disharmony because they haven't practiced anything, blah, 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 blah. And then the conductor comes and steps up to the podium and tick, 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 tick. All right, now. And magically, all this dissonance goes away. It all comes into harmony. And I guess that was just a little thought that came to me that gave me a great deal of comfort.
I love that image.
Great image. And it speaks to the authority issue, doesn't it?
Yes. Oh, yeah. But it also puts it in the terms of music, which is so beautiful.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Lovely.
So there was 2 sentences you read that just echoed back to something I asked a little while ago. And I just wanted to ask it again with a little more clarity and see if you guys could bring this thought home for me. It said, the world you see has nothing to do with reality. It is of your own making and does not exist. And so I think I'm just trying to process what Manu was saying a little bit earlier, or related to something he was saying. So if I'm looking at a wall and I think for whatever reason it's a horrible wall because it's got mean graffiti on it and it's racial slurs and so I see 2 things. I see all my judgments about how bad this stuff on the wall is, but I also see a wall. And so it seems like both of those things are of my own making. The first, that all the judgments and interpretations, those are not real. That's completely a mental construct. So let those go. But at some point in this practice, is it fair to say getting that the wall isn't reality? Like there is no wall really like that's a part of this, yes? Being able to forgive this bottle that I'm looking at and not, it goes that far, yes?
I think so. I think it goes that far. Because what does it represent, the bottle and the wall? Something separate.
Separate from God and solid and perishable and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, fear. Like for anything that the belief and form itself, separate, Yeah.
Yeah, it's not an easy answer here, but it's all in the experience and in the practice. So for example, when I'm reaching out to the bottle, I don't have to tell myself it's a bottle that I'm reaching out to, but I know that it has a form and it has a meaning in itself, right? So even though it's a meaning I've given it, but for practical purposes, I know that when I pick up the bottle and have water, it's going to be helpful. Or if I don't stop, I will crash into the wall that is in front of me. Yeah, kind of going back to some of the other examples you'd given, Derek.
Yep.
So I think there's 2 aspects, just like you're stating it. One is the meaning that we've attributed to these seeming objects. And then there is because we are attributing meaning to these objects, that's how we are creating the separation of everything. It's all in our thoughts. So we can still interact with the forms that we see in front of us, but the less we do so, the more at oneness we have the possibility of being, until the final step is taken by God, where we experience the oneness in ways that we cannot understand right now.
Yeah, it kind of leads us up to that point, I think, by the time we're...
It's almost like letting go, like detachment, not being attached to something. Knowing it has a purpose, but yeah.
There's a difference also too. I think we have to, as long as we associate with form in any way, we have to accommodate that. And in order to maneuver, and also it said too that the Holy Spirit uses everything, every darn thing, for new purposes. Once we start to give our little bit of willingness to this process.
In the bottle.
And pardon me?
Even
Hit
the
the
bottle.
Even the bottle.
I thought you said hit the bottle. Yeah, even the bottle, right? Definitely. Yeah. No, it's true.
That's true. Beautiful.
We have a greater appreciation for the use of the bottle now. Not take it for granted.
Been repurposed. Yeah.
So I heard somewhere else that basically this was another way to describe it, Derek. So the person said that by giving the names that we do to different objects and the meaning attached to them, that is our way to deny God, and goes back to the authority problem.
Yeah.
And the way we are denying God by doing that is because we are painting our own picture onto the world instead of what it is in its own right, which is what God has come up with. Yeah. So we are actually denying God when we think of the wall and its characteristics and the judgments that we put on it. And the more we can just be, as we were saying before, and be in that presence, be in that spirit, the more at peace and the more our essential attribute of peace we can experience and enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. Without guilt, really. Because that's an easy step to take. But I think that this whole prepping, I don't know, it's kind of like if you're up in the high wire and there's no net down. I don't know about you, but if I was in the circus and I was doing that, I would be just starting out and somebody pushes me and says, okay, get out there, go on that line. And I said, but there's no net. And it would be a very different feeling if I were given that same push and I look down and there is a net.
Yeah.
I don't know if that applies or not, but that's what came to mind.
Yeah, and not doing this in a guilty fashion at all. And also what Mustafa said earlier, don't let's not judge our own selves, right?
Yeah.
So so, and so we have to see ourselves, we can only see ourselves as we see the other. And so that's where we must be guiltless. We must practice guiltlessness so that we can see the world as it truly is.
Wow.
That's why it tells us not to seek to change the world, but it brings it right back to us, right back to how we think. And the only way the other is going to disappear is doing this, because it's realizing that we are in truth one. I mean, truthfully, it's such a foreign concept.
It is.
That's why this whole the workbook and every part of the whole curriculum here is so constantly. I hear so many times people will say, "Oh, it's it. They already said that." They keep repeating the same thing. Yes, they do. He does, because it's taken us unless you're 15 and you're just starting out, lucky you, because you haven't been pumped with as much stuff as the rest of us have. But in the illusion, it's so strong. We do need this repetition. And I used to rail against, I don't any longer.
Because Ardith, you guiltless dodo, you need you need the affirmation.
I have never been called that in my life. Thank you, Manu. I appreciate You hit the nail right on the head. Yes.
Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing it to myself. That's why I took the liberty.
Thank
Dodo.
you. Dodo.
Well,
I will remember that.
You guys, on this joyful note, I'm sorry, but we've come to the end of the hour. And I think it would be a good idea to end the hour in gratitude with something from the workbook. And one of my favorite passages from the workbook is the final lessons, the last five last final lessons. I'll read, and then I'll bid you farewell. This holy instant would I give to you. Be you in charge, for I would follow you, certain that your direction gives me peace. And if I need a word to help me, he will give it to me. If I need a thought, that will he also give. And if I need but stillness and a tranquil open mind, these are the gifts I will receive of him. He is in charge by my request, and he will hear and answer me, because he speaks for God, my Father, and his Holy Son. Amen.
Amen.
Man,
Thank you all for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you.
For
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
love to
Thank
all
you.
of you.
So
Love
good to
to
see
all of
everybody.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So I will, Johanna, did you want to chat for a second before I close it down? Actually,
I want to introduce you, the lady that you see in the square.
yep,
That's my sister.
it is. Oh,
Lizette's my
Hi
sister.
there.
hi, Lisette.
Hi,
Yeah.
Derek.
Good to meet you.
I'm just here because I didn't know how to stop this. I wanted to get out because I thought you hosts want to review the session, but I didn't know how to stop. But now I found it. I found it. I'll leave you
Alrighty.
to it.
No,
Thank
that's
you very
okay.
much.
You two now look similar to me now that I put two and two together. I'm like, of course you're sisters.
Yeah, we were only a year apart, and when we grew up, everybody thought we were twins.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's our
Okay.
joke always. Yeah. You
I
have to
leave you
go.
to it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Love
Bye,
you.
Bye-bye.
Lisette.
Bye-bye. Love you too.
Yeah.
Is she also in the Netherlands or Switzerland, or where's she at?
She's in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Oh,
she's in
okay.
the Netherlands, southwest of the Netherlands. Yeah, close
Mm.
to the North Sea. Yeah.
Mm.
And she's very much into Course in Miracles, so she's
Oh,
a conversation partner. Yeah.
wow. Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's really nice. Yeah.
Mm.
We have these deep conversations together, and we laugh a lot, so it's good.
Mm. How long has she been into it?
I think sort of like you. I think.
Okay, about
15,
half
20
as
years.
long as you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I haven't. It doesn't matter. Years don't count.
Right. Right. I've been doing it 20 years, and I there's still some things I can't believe that I haven't internalized them yet.
I haven't either. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It
Because
really,
at one point it will click, and that's it. Even if you haven't
yep,
gotten everything, it doesn't matter.
yep.
Doesn't matter.
That was beautiful for me.
Yeah.
That was powerful, touching.
I loved it. It was another symphony.
Yeah, it really was. It had that energy about it.
Yeah, it did.
Mhm.
I suppose with it's 1, 2, 3, 4 of the symphony